afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. The calendar has turned to November, which means the days are colder and shorter, and as the leaves have fluttered to the ground, we've seen Mother Nature letting go. Autumn's transition is a metaphor today for our guest. He's a native Vermonter who spent the past 17 years with UVM Extension, including the past decade as Dean of Extension. And now he's announced that he'll be stepping down from his deanship. It is always a pleasure to welcome Doug Lantagne to the program. Welcome.
Thank you, Judy. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, this is a big change. Tell me a little bit about what went into your decision and what you're going to be doing.
Well, come December 31st, it'll be 13 and a half years as Dean and Director. And over that time, we've had a lot of change. And I've always believed everyone is replaceable. And I got thinking over the last year or two that it was time to let somebody else's vision take over and move forward. As I've worked over the last number of years with a great team across the state, it was just time for new leadership. It's time for me to step back, think about other things that I want to do in my life, and pursue those.
Now, as you look back as your time here at UVM, what do you think of professionally that stands out to you as some accomplishments?
Oh, I just think the overall reputation of Extension over the last 10 to 15 years has re-strengthened tremendously, just because of the great work of the faculty and staff across the state, the renewed focus on programs that met the direct needs for those folks that live here in Vermont, and also more broadly the region, from our faculty programs to our staff programs, to the amount of grant and contract work that they've done. We used to do probably $500,000 a year, and now we're well over, well, we're 10.2 million this year, and that has allowed them to hire other folks, keep the size of Extension the same, and continue to make increased impact across the state. So that's what I'm most proud of, is what the work my faculty and staff have done.
Well, I have to tell you on a personal note, it's been always great having these chats with you and to learn more about what Extension is doing, and it never ceases to amaze me, all the different topics that we talk about, and you know, I learn something new every single day on this job, which is such a gift.
Well, that's always the problem with our website too. We can never get it organized because there are so many different things to do.
All right. Well, we have a few other topics to touch on this afternoon. In recent weeks, Extension has researched 2 new crops in Vermont. The first is industrial hemp. Here's some background from across the fences. Keith Silva.
I mean, I just want to find crops to help farmers stay viable. And, you know, and I think this is a unique crop. There's a lot of businesses out there that exist, a lot of businesses that are trying to get started right now. I think some of the barriers will diminish over time. Even over the 2 years we've been working on this, some of the barriers have lessened, diminished a bit. The USDA likely at some point will start funding the research. You know, hopefully, you know, one of my goals is to have our own seed industry in Vermont so that we don't have to worry about importing seed, which is really probably the most important goal for us to reach before anything else. We know it can grow, you can see it growing here. It looks very well, it's doing very well, but access to seed is probably the most significant barrier. So growing seed locally is actually a pretty immediate need. To me, I don't like to be left behind, right? So why aren't we in Vermont on the forefront of something instead of behind waiting for everybody else to do it, you know? And that's always been, you know, the way I operate. If I see an opportunity that I think that we should go after, let's go after it if we believe that it could be something that would be good for Vermont farmers.
The research project and program is in very capable hands with Heather Darby and the Crops and Soils team. They're really behind it. They know what they're doing, and we're extremely excited. Full Sun is, and I personally am very happy that we've, you know, finally gotten to this point. Why we're excited is that information is going to travel from roots and research out into the hands of other farmers that are saying, well, at least I want to try this.
So Doug, how would a new crop like this help Vermont farmers?
Well, hemp was a big crop prior to World War II or during World War II, and it was put within the overall drug war, even though it has no THC in it, but it has essential oils. Hemp is used for making rope. So there are lots of different products that have been commercially available, even in this country now, that are all imported. And Vermont always does better in niche crops. So as long as this is a niche crop, it provides an opportunity for Vermont farmers just to have another crop as part of their portfolio of crops from which they can make some income.
Well, I know Extension also has been researching elderberries in Vermont.
Yep.
Let's get some background on that crop.
So they're really well adapted to this climate.
At the farm between in Cambridge, John Hayden thinks an elderberry bush is the perfect plant for Vermonters to have at home.
What we like about them is they'll grow well in marginal soils, so some of the heavier soils where other fruit won't thrive. So they have a nice little niche there. So that's we're using them to plug into areas where we couldn't really grow other fruit. There's a lot of talk about them. People are joking, it's like the next big thing.
We created these 3 different scenarios, a 40 bush planting, a 1 acre planting, and a 5 acre planting, and looked at what the markets and prices would be for all of those different scales. And then we also created an elderberry decision tool, which is an online spreadsheet where you can go and you can plug in all of your own numbers for the enterprise that you want to create and see whether that would be profitable for you.
The market for elderberry products is still developing, and so commercial production is still a ways away. To increase the popularity of the fruit and get ahead of the curve, Nickerson suggests starting small.
To start a commercial elderberry business, there's going to be a lot of upfront capital investment. And because that's not going to be for everybody, but the plant is still really great, we're recommending that people who are interested in it, but who might not want to make those big capital investments, they should still grow it, just growing it at a smaller scale.
Is that one of the key roles of Extension, is to see if these different kinds of crops are viable?
Yes, I mean all the time. We're always trying to look toward the horizon and get our constituents to look toward the horizon of what changes, what opportunities, whether it was canola and canola oil for biodiesel a few years ago, whether it's industrial hemp or whether it's elderberry. Our job as a land-grant university is to look at opportunities for our agricultural operations.
How many research dollars does UVM pull in?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier, this last year, $10.2 million. We have been in the $7 to $8 million range for several years before that, and we just jumped to 10.2. But I am most proud because now the medical school brings in $80 million, but we brought in $10 million, and for the last 2 to 3 years, we've been the second greatest grant getter on campus among all the units. And we have 18 faculty and staff, and other units have multiples of that in faculty. So I'm really, really proud of our folks and the work they do.
Well, research is one goal of Extension, and of course another key goal is education. A couple of weeks ago, Extension helped host an agricultural conservation tour in Addison County. Here's a recap.
This is the Addison County Conservation Tour. We have a bus tour going on with probably about 40 participants from around the state. We like to bring in policymakers, folks in politics, just farmers who are interested, Middlebury College students. People are still very interested in agriculture. They're still very interested to come out and see what's happening on farms. They just need the opportunity to come out to farms in a way that they can learn. And this is a great opportunity here because it's a very informative, educational view, and we get to talk to the farmers, and the farmers can tell us what they're doing without us prompting them. And we pick farms because of what they're doing. They're just being good farmers.
My job, I do 2 things. I bring things back for the senator and for my colleagues in Washington who work directly on some of the policy issues. So seeing what's taking place, what it is that works for the farmers in implementing conservation practices, what the needs are in the among folks like UVM Extension and NRCS and some of the other programs that support the farmers. A federal dollar that Senator Leahy helps bring to Vermont doesn't do anybody any good if that dollar sits unspent because it's just too hard to get access to and ultimately goes back to the federal treasury, at the end of a year.
So these tours are really important.
Oh, they are. I mean, it's critically important to get people out on the farms and seeing what folks are actually doing within agriculture across the state. And this one in Addison County, and Jeff Carter has just been doing an excellent job of doing these types of tours for years, and he just does a wonderful job.
That's awesome. Well, there's one other idea that I'd like to ask you about. It involves young Vermonters and technology. Let's take a look at that.
Well, we've got a group of kids that are taking part in a 4-H UAS exploration program. Most people know a UAS as a drone. We started out having them do an overview of the uses of drones, and we reviewed some of the rules and regulations. The FAA is constantly coming back and making changes and modifications because this is all new, that the public can access these units and use them. And then they worked on the simulators the first day. The second day of the program, we looked at some real data that had been collected by the Spatial Analysis Lab that's based here at the University of Vermont. And they did some calculations using computer programming. Right now, behind me, they are working on with a simulator, a flight simulator, and getting the feel of how the switches interact with a virtual drone. Earlier, though, they had a chance to fly a real drone, and that was really cool for them. And then they had a little test, go from one platform to another.
Why is it important to introduce this technology to kids this age?
Well, they're excited about it, and this generation is going to be doing a lot with these UAS units. There are a lot of applications, agriculture, bridge inspections, rescue missions, and so it's important for young people to find out about all these uses and to come up with new ideas, how to use the technology to do good.
Some people think of using drones as playing with toys, but in this program, this is a science tool. You're teaching science here. How does it work?
It can be something that people enjoy just for a hobby, and one of the things they saw on the first day was there's actually something called drone racing or UAS racing. But yes, for me, I look at it as a way of getting kids excited about science and technology, and so that they're going to be able to maybe go into these fields. They've learned a little bit about what you have to do to become somebody that works, say, at the Spatial Analysis Lab, and they've seen some real-world applications that are helpful to society.
Up, down, rotating right, left, and then moving forward, back, left, right. You want to press take off.
What do you want the youth who are participating in this program to take away from it?
Well, I'd like them to tell their friends about it. We'd like to run it again. We're going to get some feedback from them to see what they thought was really useful. And we'd like them to, again, in this informal setting, be excited about science and technology. Take that with them and think about careers.
Oh, stuck landing. Nice job.
That's a lot different from what people might think of the traditional 4-H clubs.
Yeah, they would, but they would probably be a little bit wrong because 4-H has always been about teaching science and technology, engineering, and math. If you even go back to the very first corn clubs at the very beginning of 4-H, it wasn't about anything more than teaching kids that you could breed corn to grow to be bigger than what their parents were actually planting, and to teach them how to bring that back to their farm, grow it, and parents scratching their head wondering why the kids' corn was bigger than their corn. And so 4-H has always been about learn by doing, hands-on work, but always based in that science, that technology, that engineering, that math. So it's about the science, whether it's horses or whether it's cows or whether it's baking. It's the community aspect, it's the interaction. But giving kids something they want to do that they get excited about. Our kids all tend to be more excited when they're doing something they want to do. That playing with, I mean, for me it was model airplanes. Now today you can fly your own machine through the air with your cell phone, and that's very exciting. But it's teaching them about the underlying aerodynamics, the science, the technology, all of those things that will make a successful youth in the career market today.
Well, briefly, I want to mention again that you were stepping down as dean. Any last thoughts?
Well, it's been an absolutely wonderful 17 years. I grew up in this state. I went to the University of Vermont. Me and a colleague said, gee, we'll have to come back and work for UVM someday. He works in the state. I came back and actually worked for UVM. So when I look of all the people that have helped me get to be here and to be a successful leader, I have nothing but thanks for all of them and for the great team that we have here that makes me look successful. It's their good work and their success, and I just try to reflect back that it's their success that has led Extension to be where it is today.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for all your contributions over the years, and it's just been a pleasure.
Well, same here, Judy.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.